Um, so let's just wait a minute or two. People are still arriving. Oh, I thought we might be just two or three of us, but here we are. It's wonderful. I'm glad. Group, thanks to Sage and her mom Ashley, um, in Alabama, coming to us from Alabama. Yeah, please feel free to put in the chat where you're coming from. And if you're new to Inside LA today, uh, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Trudy, the founding teacher. I almost said the love barbarian, the founding teacher at Inside LA, also AKA the love barbarian on the Netflix series Midnight Gospel, episode 4. And yeah, Merry Christmas. Today is the last day of Hanukkah, and it's always, I always love it when Hanukkah and Christmas coincide, since I'm from born into a Jewish family and celebrating Buddhism, which leaves me free to invent all kinds of different Christmases, since I'm not bound to the usual Christmas celebration. Ours, for those of you who may have had Christmas plan disappointments, ours were also wrecked by COVID this year. Our our inability, not unwillingness, to be with our my stepdaughter and her husband and our little 4-year-old grandchild. Um, so I sympathize with any disappointments you may have had, and I'm really happy that we're all here together. And this morning, I want to, yeah, as I was saying, if you're new to Inside LA, I just want to explain we divide the time roughly into thirds, or new to this sitting group, where we meditate first, which we're about to do. And I always do a bit of guided meditation, but we leave lots of silence too, for you to just be quiet with yourself, and then have some teachings, and then a chance for some dialogue and conversation together. So that's the plan for this morning. And I want to talk about, yes, today is a day of celebrating the divine birth of Jesus, and but I also want to talk about how it's really for the divine birth of each one of us, and how we can see that. So let's sit together. Find a posture that is comfortable for your body to be in for approximately 30 minutes, a little less this morning maybe, but approximately that much. So I like to begin by taking a few deep breaths, some intentional deep breaths in and out, breathing in and breathing out. Just releasing any tension you may be carrying. Breathing in the presence and aliveness of this moment. And breathing out into a sense of relaxation. Just relaxing into this moment. And once again, a deep breath in. And a gentle breath out. And one of the greatest gifts that we can offer to ourselves, to each other, to all those whose lives we touch is the gift of attention, of mindful presence. So, moment by moment, breath by breath, we bring attention to how it is right now. And perhaps as you bring attention to this breath, to feeling the breath in the body, seeing if each breath, each sensation can be seen and felt anew. You can place a hand on your heart and maybe a hand on your belly. So you can feel the movement of the breath in and out of the body. Just breathing into this moment, into the body, aware of the breath, the body, opening all your senses. Noticing what you see, hear, taste, touch, smell, think, and feel. And bring you into this moment of existence with a calmer mind and heart. It only takes a few minutes of mindful awareness and presence like this to bring you out of the hustle and bustle of the holidays, to be just where you are, right here and right now. Just taking a moment to notice and appreciate this ultimate gift, the gift of aliveness, the gift of existence itself. And maybe sprinkling a little bit of gratitude, no matter how intense your existence may be at this time in your life. We can feel this deep and primal gratitude for the gift of this precious human birth, of life itself. And offering some loving kindness. May we and all beings be safe and protected. May we and all beings live with the ease of an open heart. May we and all beings find ways to feel deeply peaceful and connected. May we and all beings be healthy and strong. And if that's not possible, may we accept our limitations with grace. May we and all beings have the inner and outer resources we need. May we and all beings know the steadiness of heart with all the ups and downs of life. May we and all beings find refuge in community and a sense of belonging. And may we and all beings awaken to our true nature. And may we exist in understanding and compassion for all beings. And just taking a few minutes to continue with whatever loving kindness, wishes, and blessings you might have to offer. So once again, welcome to our Inside LA Sunday sitting group, special one today on Christmas Day. And I'm speaking to you from Venice, from LA, from the unceded lands of the Tongva indigenous people who were here celebrating their holidays and rituals many, many years before the settlers, the colonists got here. And today I want to offer you some teachings about what this day means in terms of Jesus's divine birth. I know it's also the last day of Hanukkah, and we did have a chance to have some Hanukkah last Sunday together, and and we talked about the light of this season, the season of the solstice, the many traditions that have some version of the Hanukkah festival of lights at this time of year. in the beginning of December in the Zen Buddhist, the East Asian countries, there is a special retreat. In Japan, it's called the Rohatsu Retreat, and it celebrates the Buddha's enlightenment. Literally, the enlightenment, the light of the heart. And anyway, and tomorrow is the beginning of Kwanzaa, a cultural holiday for people of African descent that goes until, I think, New Year's, maybe right after New Year's, into the new year. And today we celebrate traditionally the birth of Jesus, the birth of a child. And I want to tell you, years ago, I had the experience of being in an intensive silent Zen meditation retreat out in Spencer Abbey in Spencer, Massachusetts, in central Massachusetts, which is a monastery of Trappist monks. And at that time, Father Keating was the abbot, a very tall monk who, in his black monk's robes, we celebrated a sesshin with Sasaki Roshi there in 1975. And all the furniture was cleared out of what was their living room, and we created a zendo with our meditation cushions and people sitting sort of around the edges of the room. And then in the center was very empty. And on Christmas morning, Father Keating, we celebrated a mass right there on the zendo floor, in the middle of the floor. He celebrated a mass. It was obviously adjusted and adapted for the Zen retreat. But I had this insight of just, oh my goodness, this isn't just Jesus's birth we're celebrating. This is the birth of each one of us, of the divinity in each one of us. This is this is the celebration of being able to see anew, to see with fresh eyes, to be born again. And that, that phrase born again has taken on some different cultural and political meanings with evangelical Christians, but we can also enjoy. I won't say appropriate. We can enjoy, because who's appropriated what anymore, right? In this realm, but we can enjoy that term again, because it's like Thomas Merton, who Jack always talks about his insight when he saw the secret beauty in everyone and just wanted to, bow down and worship the secret beauty in everyone. And I was remembering too, that movie Avatar, where they said their greeting was, "I see you," which is actually a traditional African greeting, at least in South Africa, to say, "I see you." And it's really saying, I see your heart. I see your soul. I see your divinity. When we deeply see each other or feel seen by another, it brings a kind of peace and a sense of maybe valuing, treasuring oneself more, or each other. And yesterday I was talking with the Hope group, a wonderful group. I feel privileged every year to, it's a tradition that now, after 3 years, that I teach that group either on Christmas Eve day or Christmas, however it falls out. And it's a group for people who are grieving, or who have depression, or who have, their lives have been affected by the suicide of someone they love, or have considered it for themselves. And it's a wonderful group where you can really feel that other people there get what you are going through, when it's something that might not be so easy to talk about with others. And so I was talking too about just this sense of the divinity of each one of us. And one person put in the chat toward the end of the group, I don't really feel very divine. or it's hard to feel divine, at certain times. And we all know that. I mean, I don't know about you. There's many moments of the day when I am not particularly connected to my own divinity or a sense of that. Um, and I've been playing with the OpenAI chatbot recently. And so I asked the chatbot, I said, so what do you do when you're not feeling divine or in touch with your own divinity? And it gave some wonderful answers that I want to share with you. These are AI generated answers. Now, AI was trained by humans, of course. And then I'm also going to read you a little bit later, a letter that I asked it to write from the Buddha to Jesus. But this is what it said. I was really I liked it. It said, believing in your own divinity can be challenging if you're feeling low, especially when you're feeling low, or I'm going to obviously paraphrase some, low or disconnected from yourself. But it's important to remember divinity is not about feeling special or superior to others. It's about recognizing the inherent worth of each and every human being. And I am paraphrasing a lot, but it says one way to start recognizing your own divinity and believing in the divinity within you is to focus on your own special qualities and strengths. And we don't often, I'm saying too, we don't often ask ourselves, like, what makes me special? And this isn't in the sense of, getting braggy or conceited about ourselves. It's just about, what are you good at? What are your passions? Taking a moment to reflect, what are your interests? And to recognize and to celebrate your own strengths and abilities. And I loved it that the chatbot brought this up, because I thought this is an actually good practice for us. In Buddhism, we would say, contemplate your sila, contemplate your own goodness or virtue. And that is a teaching that the Buddha gave. To really appreciate the mountains that you've already climbed and not just look ahead at, oh my gosh, look at all these mountains I still have to climb. Then the chatbot said, another approach is to practice self-care and self-compassion, taking care of your physical and emotional well-being. By taking care of yourself, and I'm quoting, you acknowledge the inherent value and worth of your own being. Then it goes on to recommend practices like mindfulness and loving kindness and journaling, the things we already know how to do. And then to surround yourself with some sense of community, of people who value you just by your being here. I value you for your study and practice, for your showing up any Sunday that you do. And some of you show up practically every Sunday. But to really value that, to understand that this is something that can give you confidence in your own practice, in the strength of your practice, as well as in your inherent value and self-worth. So thank you, Matthew, he's putting the link to the OpenAI, and you can all enjoy it and play with it. I was telling people yesterday that, one of my friends had it write a letter from Ram Dass to Dracula, offering compassion to Dracula, forgiving Dracula for their misdeeds, and hoping that Dracula will choose a better path in the future, etc. And I think that, we have lots of practices that can help us tap into our inner wisdom, into a sense of peace, into that, practices that can help us sense our own, whether we call it divinity or self-worth, or just trust that we have what it takes to wake up in this life, that we have what it takes to be, to feel more loving, to feel more connected and collected, yes, and to feel that sense of belonging that I think every human being needs. We have practices that help us quiet and calm the mind. Like I was saying during the meditation, that help us during the holidays. That can be a time of a lot of financial pressure, family pressure, cultural pressure to be merry, eat, drink, and be merry. And if you're, sober and you're not feeling merry, and etc., it can be it can be a really hard time for a lot of people. We have practices of devotion, practices of compassion, self-compassion. And all of these figures, whether it's Mother Mary or Kuan Yin or Jesus or the Buddha, they are not worshipped as divinities in our tradition, but seen as embodiments of the spiritual strengths and qualities that are available to each one of us in this precious human birth. So we celebrate the precious human birth of each one of us today on Christmas. I want to read you the letter. Just find it here in all my notes for you. I want to read you the letter that the Buddha wrote to Jesus. Hold on, be a little patient with me. I have lots of notes, and now I can find it. Okay, here. I have two of them. Here's the first one. Dear Jesus, I hope this letter finds you well. That was the instruction. The instruction to the chatbot was write a letter from the Buddha to Jesus about the meaning of Christmas. I hope this letter finds you well. I have heard much about the celebration of Christmas, which marks the occasion of your birth. As you may know, I'm a spiritual teacher, and I've spent much of my life studying and teaching the path to enlightenment. In Buddhism, we believe that true happiness and contentment come from within, and that it's possible for all beings to find lasting peace and to wake up. In this light, I understand that Christmas is a time of celebration and joy for many people, and I certainly do not wish to diminish the significance of this holiday. However, I hope to offer a different perspective on the meaning of Christmas that is rooted in the teachings of Buddhism. To me, Christmas is a time to remember the interconnectedness of all beings and to cultivate love and compassion for all living things. It's a time to practice generosity and kindness and to remember that true happiness comes from within rather than from external circumstances or material possessions. I wish you all the best on your spiritual journey and hope that the celebration of Christmas may serve as a reminder to all people to cultivate love and compassion for all beings. Now, the Buddha also did add, hold on. Well, I can't find it now, but the Buddha also did point out that in Buddhism, we don't, while acknowledging that Jesus was born as the Son of God, the Buddha pointed out that Buddhism is not a theistic religion. And whether you are here for Buddhist teachings, whether you're here for the teachings of mindfulness and self-compassion, the secular teachings, it really doesn't matter. The point is that, once again, we're in this practice, the arrow points directly into our own hearts. It's not a tradition where we worship deities outside of ourselves. And the Buddhist deities, all the deities in all the cosmologies, whether it's Hinduism or Christianity or whoever it may be, these are, as I said, they are seen as representations of what's possible for the human heart. And that means for each one of us that we can find ways to grow into the compassion that we might admire in other figures, or the love that we might see somebody else as manifesting or having. I hope that today that on this holiday, you will reflect on what is possible for you in this way, and that it really is, and it really is about trust that it's possible for each one of us, no matter how we might be feeling in any given moment, and no matter how challenging or intense your life situation may be at this time in your life. One of the ways that I want to mention too, to cultivate this sense of self-worth, of connection, of community, is through what we call seva, or service. Seva in Sanskrit or Pali, but service. And recently, Jack and I gave a talk for the Seva Foundation that was founded by Ram Dass. And that foundation, their mission was dedicated to eradicating blindness in the world. And they have restored the sight of, I think at this point, over 3 million people in Nepal and surrounding countries and all over the world, through offering free cataract surgery and eye care. And since this is a holiday where we're celebrating seeing with fresh eyes and seeing anew, I just want to mention that foundation to you. But we gave a talk for them where we really did talk about the generosity of seva, the generosity of service. And we talk about generosity in this tradition often in the context of giving, or we think of service as giving. Giving of our time, giving of our resources, financial giving, which I hope you will do for Insight LA at this end of year. Include us in your giving. But there's a bigger sense of seva, of what service is. Look at trees and what they are giving to us, endlessly giving, putting out their oxygen. Look at the I forget what the microsome, the little fungi that live in all the roots of the trees that are giving the nourishment to the trees, the sunlight that gives life to all the plants that nourish and give life to us. I mean, this is a much vaster understanding of service and what it is, that really seeing we are embedded in a connected, interdependent world of constant seva, constant giving. To sustain life on this planet, to sustain this life, the life of you and me. But it's also true that, that giving, service, helping other people, volunteering, whatever form that might take in your life, does bring a sense of purpose when your life, when you may not be connected to a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. It's a great way to connect with a sense of purpose and meaning. It's a way to feel that you have accomplished something, to feel proud and good about something that you've done. Some of my friends here that I know, your whole life is devoted to helping other people. For you, it might be actually important to set boundaries for yourselves and to make sure that you're taking care of your own needs as well. So wherever you are on that continuum of offering lots of service and maybe needing to make sure you set aside time for recharging and for yourself, or maybe having been feeling like you're kind of drowning in loneliness and feeling lost or depressed, and there doing some service can actually help can lift your heart. I took a friend once who was really going through a suffering time in her life to meet with a well-known Buddhist Lama, and she asked him what to do. She sort of poured out her situation and her troubles. And he looked at her and he just said, do something good for someone else. That's all he said. And I thought, oh, wow, that's the wisdom of all spiritual traditions, isn't it? That's not just, special Buddhist Lama wisdom. It is a way to connect with something that's bigger than yourself. And it's a way to combat feelings of loneliness and isolation or unworthiness, all of that. So, whatever it may be, offering your time, helping a neighbor, um, just keeping an eye out for where you might be helpful in this life can bring joy and fulfillment to you in just in lots of ways. Um, Another great thing about service is that it is an expression of our interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh calls our interconnectedness or interdependence. It's both a practice of interbeing. I see you might need something. You see me, you see I might need something. I might need support for Inside LA. You might need the support of teachings and meditation and mindfulness and self-compassion practices to uplift your life. Um, it's beautiful because it's both the practice itself and the expression of something greater. Um, and again, I love that, just like the overlap between Christmas and Hanukkah, all of these ways to love and to shine and to feel grateful for this precious human birth. And why is this human birth considered so precious and divine? Because it's really the only realm of existence, at least that's visible to us, where we can wake up and be liberated and free our hearts to exist in love and compassion for all beings. So I want to close with a poem, a teaching from the great theologian Howard Thurman. Theologian, he was the pastor at Boston University for many years, a wonderful theologian of African descent who wrote this: when the song of the angels is stilled, when the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and the princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flocks, the work of Christmas begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among people, and to make music in the heart. When I lived in Cambridge, we used to make music. We would actually go and sing Christmas songs in the neighborhood to people. I don't know if people do that here. I've been sort of disconnected from those practices here in LA, focusing completely on Insight LA. But this is what I want to share with you today. And now is your turn to offer any thoughts or reflections or questions from your own practice. It doesn't have to be about anything that I've spoken about today. But yeah, anything. And I meant to say, when the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, and when all the queens and the princesses are home and the shepherds are back with their flocks, the work of Christmas begins to see the lost, not just to find, but to see the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among people, to make music in the heart. Mindfulness is about seeing, about clear seeing. And just to see each other is probably the best Christmas present or Hanukkah present we could give or receive. Okay, thank you, everybody. Your turn. So if you would like to comment or share or offer a question, anything like that, please just just raise your hand and you can unmute yourself. And don't be shy, because anything you're thinking about or have to offer, believe me, it is or has been on somebody else's mind as well.
I'll share something.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. It was beautiful. Um, Ever since I was a kid, I still have the same feeling that I love the sense of peace at Christmas, and always wondered why it can't linger longer. That universal sense of peace that feels so truthful, not a fantasy, but and I'm still thinking, so okay, how do you make this last?
Yeah.
And it's kind of consistent with a feeling I've had recently, and that is to appreciate the mundane and the routine more than the peaceful moments that I'm personally having. That, or maybe my issue has been throughout my life, like chasing the high. So I appreciate within the relatively recent past, no more, that I am doing a lot less than that, a lot less chasing the high, and just even now while I'm talking, just feeling ordinary talking, but just having that sense of wonder and awe about being connected to this body, having the senses I have and the want, and just appreciating the normal, the simple, the mundane, um, versus sitting on the cushion, which I still really appreciate and I need the practice. But so I'm just appreciating more and more, bringing, I guess, a sense of awe to the simple.
That's really beautiful, and in Zen Buddhism, they say Zen mind is ordinary mind. It's ordinary mind is the way. There are lots of teachings about that. And they're not just talking about the ordinary distracted mind. They're talking about the mind that you're appreciating. Is it Daniel or Dan? How do you, Daniel? Um,
By the way,
they're talking about the moments that you're appreciating, the moments of being present with these simple activities that allows us to appreciate them and to find the peacefulness of just being ordinary and doing the ordinary activities that sustain our life, the everydayness of things. My first teacher used to say Zen mind is enough mind. It's appreciating that, not just who you are, but what you're doing in any given moment when you're mindful and present with it, it has all the ingredients necessary for awakening, that the contents of this moment are the contents of awakening. It's that simple. So thank you. That's a beautiful teaching and realization. And as for chasing the high, I mean, we all love the high, the intensity of the ecstasy of those moments, but it reminds me of my 12-step work, where you learn to appreciate serenity and not just be chasing the ecstatic highs, right? And um, uh, there's a story, I don't know if I can remember it properly, but I love it. I wish I'll try it. It's a story about, it's from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And it's a story about somebody, a yogi who goes to practice, do some intensive retreat in the mountains, and then comes down after, I don't know, a year or something, some long intense practice, comes down to meet with their teacher and relate their meditation experiences. And so they relate the experience of how some demons came, in their imagination and were really tormenting them. And they understood that these were just, delusions and illusions. And so they were able to just stay with their practice, keep their hearts steady, and not be overwhelmed or distracted by the demons. And then they said, as a result of this success, this beautiful goddess of compassion appeared. And it was just so blissful, and she just like poured all this light and love onto the yogi, and he was feeling very happy. And so he expressed this to his teacher. And his teacher said, wow, well, you passed the first test, but you really flunked the second one. And that could be like a koan. What did he mean by that? But what he meant by that was, okay, you didn't get distracted by all your tormenting ideas about yourself and others, your demons of various kinds, your fears and so forth. But you got totally seduced by the ecstasy and the bliss that came with the image of this goddess. In other words, you did not sustain your peaceful, ordinary, mindful practice through that distraction. I love that story. Thank you, Dan. And Daniel, that was meant to be a story of sort of validating your insight that you're having about the ordinary moments. I don't know if that story was clear to anybody. I see these sort of blank faces, but oh well, we can't always share what we love successfully with others. Okay, here's a question from Rick in the chat while Ashley gets her thoughts together. I'll read it to you. Trudy, when we're asked to be in touch with our true nature, does that mean more than the valuable request that we be honest with ourselves? Instead, does the request ask us to be aware and attentive to a larger, more universal true nature? Yes. Yes. And Rick, you know what that larger, more universal true nature refers to as well as I do. Would you like to tell us?
I guess I occasionally need reminding.
Yeah. What is it for you? We're valuing all the traditions and insights here.
I guess love comes to mind.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
I remember going to meet with my teacher during a session, a silent intensive meditation retreat, my teacher Maureen Stewart Roshi. And I remember I was feeling like so frustrated with all my attempts to understand. And, you reach these points sometimes where your mind just like, let's go. And I went up to her and I said, Maureen, what is the Dharma anyway but love? And she just smiled. So I'm just smiling to you, Rick. Thank you. Bernard.
Yes, good morning. I just wanted to express my appreciation for both your story, Trudy, and Daniel for your appreciation of the mundane. And I'm done concentration meditation, but I'm trying to do more mindfulness meditation and to note everything. And that's the instruction. Whatever happens, you note it. You don't cling. And so in my own life, what that means is just noting the moments that between people and myself that feel good and don't feel good, and noting them both and not using the not feel good moments as reasons for separation or withdrawal or just creating a non-connection. Just letting those moments come and go. And it sounds so simple, but it's just to slow my mind down enough to see the moments is a wonderful addition to my awareness.
Yeah, and that's huge, actually. You know, we often, I mean, the teachings are very simple, but they're not easy to do. They're really
Yeah,
not.
it's so easy to hear it, but it takes
Yeah,
a lot of patience.
it really does. And thank you, Sherry. I'm glad you were here. And yeah, we'll see you next week, I hope. I'll be here on New Year's Day for those of you who aren't too hungover to come and show up. Um, and and yeah, Bernard, I just think that the most important thing I think that you said is sort of not withdrawing in the moments that don't feel good. Uh, and sometimes it's easier to see those moments and how we are in those moments that don't feel good. And when we do feel good, we sometimes don't bother to be particularly mindful about it. And that's what that story is really about. Um, you know, the moments that feel more blissful or happy or, I mean, it's different for different people. For some people, what my first teacher used to say is a good situation is a bad situation, and a bad situation is a good situation. He had these Dharma sound bites. And what he meant by that is often when you're feeling bad is when you look for, that's when you ask yourself the deep existential questions. You know, a young woman asked, you know, she, like me, had had uterine cancer, but unlike me, had to have her hysterectomy before she had a chance to have children, which was very sad. And that sadness and sorrow was driving her to ask some deep existential questions like, you know, what is being a woman? Am I still a woman? Our culture, of course, defines being a woman largely by our various reproductive organs, or organs involved in nurturing childbearing. But sometimes he meant that a bad situation can spark the longing for a spiritual path or for deepening one's spiritual practice. And sometimes in a good situation, you know, we're not motivated to do it. But it can be the opposite. I remember for me, it was much easier to practice when I felt good than when I was feeling bad. I found it hard to get to my cushion and sit with those difficult feelings. Yeah. So thank you, Bernard. And I'm cheering you on to do the awareness practices as well as the concentration practices, because they really do bring something different. And I think they're both obviously necessary, as we've talked about. You need to have a certain amount of focus and concentration to be able to have any insight or awareness about what's happening. But yeah, they're both really important. So, Ashley, hi from Alabama.
Hello. So, I wanted to touch on something that Bernard said because it immediately made me flip all the way to the beginning of my notebook for my home practice with the heart notes. Megan touched on that, and we were calling them feeling tones, whether they're pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And when he said quit clinging, I was like, that was the teaching I got. And she said one of her quotes was, when we bring awareness, we can cultivate wisdom and get out of neutral. And she was saying stuff like doing body scans just to see where you're at and like how you feel. And she was saying, you know, mindfulness helps us soften these and be happy and quit trying to get more and rest in your experience. So I just really thought that was amazing and awesome that he was thinking of something that I had been thinking of. But then coming back to some of the notes that I did, but I just wanted to be very thankful, first of all, for Megan's class. She's a great teacher. And then for Inside LA in general, for you, for everybody here, because I feel like I've actually found my little niche and it's fantastic. So I will take that time to just be grateful, and then say I've got all different kinds of stuff written down. My mind is a little bit messy today, just because I guess I'll start with why my mind is messy. It's nervousness.
Question, Ashley.
Do what?
I ask you a question?
Yes, I'm sorry, I rant.
I know. I just wanted to ask you something because based on what I heard you say yesterday, um, were you able to set some limits for your Christmas with your
That's
family?
what I was just about to talk about. That's why I'm like this. So I haven't gone yet, and Sage fell asleep, of course, when we were meditating, because she can meditate for a good 5 minutes, but that's about it. So she went in there and played with a toy and fell asleep. So I do have the freedom to speak about it, but I was wondering how I can shift nervousness into equanimity because of the fact that I'm so nervous to go. And I already told them we'll only be there long enough for her to get her presents and to eat, for her to eat, and we're leaving. So that was the boundary that I set. That's what I told them, I'm only going to be here for this amount of time. And I'm really, really nervous because they were sending me messages all last night that were so emotionally reactive, and there was no response. It was just all reaction. And it was, one of my friends was over and he was just like, I don't understand how they're even thinking that way. So another thing that I had written down was how to deal with people that are constantly emotionally reactive and keep responding to them and not be reactive yourself, because it's like one after another after another. And I know that's coming as soon as I go over there, that it's coming, and I'll say something and then they don't even think for half a second. It just comes out of their mouth. And so I just I'm shaking. I'm so nervous. That's why I was like, my mind is so messy. So that, I guess, is really my first question for you.
Okay. Well, first, I really want to cheer you on and celebrate that you set that boundary for yourself and for Sage. It's really important that you did that. Um, and as for being nervous, of course you're nervous. For one thing, you're doing something new. You've really set a limit and you're protecting yourself and your daughter in a way that you haven't maybe known how or had the courage to do up until now. So of course you're nervous. I don't know about everybody else. They'll probably write to you in the chat, but I used to get so nervous when I was doing something new like that, changing a pattern, especially in the family. And it's super hard not to be reactive to family members' reactivity. And to remember, we actually are so blessed with having a mindfulness practice that allows us to pause for a moment, just a moment. And that pause between the stimulus of facing, some reactive comment from a family member and what we say in response allows us to not be 100% reactive in response. I mean, I still am sometimes, especially with my sister. I notice it, and everybody else notices it too, by the way. But
I think I heard you talk about that on an episode of with Duncan on his podcast.
yeah, probably.
But continue, please.
Families, it just is. And so I want you to, be generous with yourself and a little compassionate with yourself, that if you do get reactive or respond in a reactive way, react instead of responding, that's okay. It's normal. It happens. And to be down on yourself and not to say, oh my gosh, I have no practice, or whatever awful thing you might say to yourself. It's not a failure. It's just natural that can happen. And in your case, you have had to deal with some real abuse. So that's not subtle. That's not like somebody making a little subtle dig at you. It's very overt. And in some ways, as painful as it is, it's good news because there's no doubt about it. You're not questioning, oh, gee, did I take that the wrong way? Did they really mean it that way? No, it's very clear. Do you see? And so you see it clearly and you can feel all your feelings about it, your sadness, your anger, your fear, whatever, all the feelings that it may bring up in you, you can just quietly feel them and hopefully be able to offer some loving kindness and some metta and some self-compassion to yourself in the midst of this. To yourself in the midst of this. You're not being asked to love and be compassionate to everybody else right now. Not today, because you're doing something new and something hard and something important.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That means so much to me that it's that it was amazing. It was a great Christmas present. Thank you, Trudy. But then like the last thing I do want to mention is something I had written down about mindfulness that you had said. Where'd it go? Being what reminds us to come back home. And I liked that one. Mindfulness is what reminds us to come back home. And then also, I wanted to mention something. This is just in my own practice, like just without my family and all of that and all the craziness that you heard about yesterday. Disregarding that, just on my own practice, I like to think of our ultimate consciousness, I guess you would say, as like an ocean. And I always say, I don't know if it was a teaching I heard once upon a time, somewhere, somehow I got in my head, ocean with a capital O, because we're connected, we're the same. And so how to keep the wires touching and how to keep being a part of the ocean instead of that wave. Yeah, that was a teaching I heard. I don't remember where it was, but
It's a very common teaching, and so you could have heard it from me or anybody. It's a beautiful metaphor that is often used for our individual existence as being a wave in the ocean of existence. And I think I talked yesterday about the ocean also being a metaphor, for the movements of trust in our hearts. That if you sit and look at the ocean, you see it's always changing.
right.
From the glassiness of dawn to the ripples of wind coming up to the waves of the windy afternoons, not to mention other weather that happens, but it's always changing. And, the spiritual practice that we do, the mindfulness practice, ultimately asks us to be simultaneously aware of being the wave and the ocean.
Mhm.
That takes practice to do that. But that's where you're headed, is to be able to sort of hold both those truths in your heart. And the teachings that you're absorbing and sharing with us are so beautiful, Ashley. You have such a sincere and devoted practice, and it's serving you well. And one thing about your daughter that I do want to say is, if Sage can meditate for 5 minutes at 8 years old, that's astonishing. When kids are being taught mindfulness, they're not taught to meditate and sit quietly. They're taught mindful games because it's not in their nature to sit and be quiet. They
No,
learn,
it's not.
especially your daughter, right? She's a live wire. So it's in their nature to be active and to be learning by manipulating reality through play. And so I just want to suggest, I might have done this before, but I want to suggest and give a shout out to Susan Kaiser Greenland's book, Mindful Games, because that might be a great resource for you with Sage instead of trying to get her to just meditate, because kids don't, mostly.
What was the book called? Mindful
Games by Kaiser Greenland, and Anissa can just put that in the chat for you because we actually have to
Yeah,
close.
move on. I'm sorry it took up so much time.
Yeah, I have trouble keeping track of time. So yeah, we need to close for this morning. I want to thank you all for being here, for your presence and your practice. It's just called Mindful Games, not Head Games, Mindful Games. Sorry. games are something else. Head games are what we play with each other when we're not being so mindful, usually. Anyway, yeah, we need to stop for today. I do want to remind you of your end of year giving and to please include Insight LA. We really do depend on your generosity to sustain all that we do in this community. And just to take a moment of, let's just sit for a moment together as we close. We take a moment to be grateful for the goodness of this practice and to offer the goodness of this practice to all beings everywhere without exception. May we and all beings grow in love, understanding, and respect for each other's path, for all the spiritual traditions of this multi-dimensional life we share. So thank you, everybody, once again. And I look forward to seeing you next week. I look forward to seeing you next year. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you choose to celebrate. And I'll see you next week.
Happy holidays.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Trudy.
I think
Happy- happy
hopefully we'll stay for breakout
holidays.
groups.
Thank you.
How group today, Anissa?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. If you want to stick around for that, that would be wonderful.
So don't turn off your Zoom. Stick around. Join a breakout next week.
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas, Judy.
Thank you, Trudy.
Thank you, Trudy and Anissa.
Thank you.